Hi, my name's Rick Arnold. I've been a builder for over 30 years. I'm also a contributing editor to Fine Home Building magazine. I also do presentations for JLC Live, and I do presentations for the Katz Roadshows across the country. Today I'm going to show you how to install and flash a flanged window. Now the first thing we want to do is to make sure to integrate the house wrap with the window flashing system. That's critical. The first thing we want is a nice straight level cut across the top. And then we want to cut those sides at 45 and slide them up out of the way. This is the most critical part of the window installation, is lifting this house wrap flap up out of the way. It's going to be the last thing coming down on top of the flashings, the sealants, and the flanges. If you don't do it this way, typically what I see is people wrapping it inside. What happens there is the flange goes on top of the house wrap, the flashing tape goes on top of the flange and on top of the house wrap, and if any leaks occur above, behind the house wrap, you have a nice area that circumvents all the flashings and the flange and the sealant and lets it go right into the house. The next cut I'm going to do is just a level seat cut, and then I'm going to cut it right down the middle here. Now there are a couple of different ways to do the sides. Let me just get this out of the way for a minute here. I'm going to show you two ways to do the sides. One on this side, one on that side. Pick one or the other, don't do both like I'm doing here. I'm just illustrating so that you can see two different ways. On this side, I'm going to cut about 2.5 inches away from the inside of the rough opening. So what you're going to see later, when I put the window in and the flashing tape on, is that the window seals to the substrate underneath here, and then the flashing tape is going to seal to the house wrap, to the substrate, and to the flange. That's called a fully adhered system. The other way to do it, which is also very popular, is to fold this in just like this, staple it, and then cut it flush. A lot of people will cut this flush on the inside here. If you're using the house wrap as an air barrier, you really don't want to do that. What happens is, if air gets behind the house wrap here and you have this house wrap going all the way to the inside of the stud and it's not sealed up, the air can travel right around through all your flashings and tapes. So what I'm going to do here is fold it inside, cut it right down the middle of the jamb, and then use the tape to seal that right to the jamb. Make sure that we stop any air leaks from coming in around behind the house wrap and into the house. Now that the house wrap has been pre-cut, it's time to address the sill pan. Before I put any tape on the bottom though, I'm going to put a piece of 1/2x6 clapboard or beveled siding down here first, with the fat side in. The idea of this is to have it pitched out so that any water that works its way inside here comes down and is pitched directly outside rather than the inside. Of course, if you're going to use this, you have to make sure to extend the rough opening height by the thickness of the beveled siding. The next step is to form a sill pan using the peel and stick membrane. In this case, I'm going to peel it off. I've cut it so it extends up the sides, 3 or 4 inches. I'm going to have it come back in so it's behind the back side of the window, and it'll overhang about 2 inches. And in the corners here, I want to make sure to push it hard into the corners. I don't want to have a radius corner because there's a chance that the window could catch it and gouge it and maybe tear it up a little bit. So on both corners, I want to make sure that I push it into the corner nice and hard. And then typically at this point, I'd take a knife out, slice the tape, fold it over, and then maybe put another piece there. But with this type of tape, it's a flex type of tape. All I have to do is just push it nice and gently right around the corner, just like that. And it forms around the corner without having to have that cut there. I'm going to do both sides and then work my way back towards the middle. Now that the rough opening is prepped, I'm going to prep the window. All I'm going to do here is put some sealant along the flange. An important thing, read the directions of the window manufacturer. Some require sealant behind the flange, some don't. Just check with them, make sure it's okay. Make sure you get a sealant that's compatible with all the materials that you're using, and make sure it's a sealant, not just a generic silicone or a caulking. Those things, they're not made for window installation. A good quality sealant is what you need to put the window in or a door and have it be leak-free for a long, long time. So what I'm going to do here, start the bottom and put a nice thick bead of sealant right along the outside edge, and I'm covering the nail holes. I'm going to bring that all the way up. I'm going to go across the top, down the other side, but I'm not going to do the bottom. We want the bottom open, bead right over the nail holes. Now that I've got the sealant on the sides and the top, the back of the flange, simply going to put this in the rough opening. And then have the guy on the inside move it left and right until it's in the exact center of the rough opening, so I get an equal gap on both sides between the window frame and the framing. Once that's done, put a level up in the top. That's good. The other thing I'm going to check is the side here. Make sure that's plumb. If this is level, this should be plumb, which it is. And I also want to use a nice long level as a straight edge because I want to make sure there's no bow here, either going in or coming out. This is a short window, so it's not a big deal. On some of these very long windows, you might get a bow in the side jamb, and you want to make sure to straighten that out and use a nice long level for a straight edge. Get that nice and straight. Okay, so that's good in both directions. So what I'm going to do is just put a tack in it right now. Right on both sides, just to hold it in place. And then for the final check, on the outside here, I'm just going to measure the diagonals from opposite corner to opposite corner, and the measurement should be exactly the same, which it is. So that means this is square, level, and plumb. We're ready to nail this whole thing off. There's one more check that I want to do on the inside. I'm going to open up the bottom sash just a little bit and make sure that that gap between the sash and the sill is dead even. Action. Now that it's all fastened, it's time to put on the rest of the flashing tape. For the sides, which you do the sides first, you start with the bottom, do the sides, finish up with the top. The sides, you cut so they extend up past the top flange and past the bottom flange a good few inches. And also, what I'm going to be doing, because I want to protect the transition, the corner on the inside where the flange fits into the jamb, that's the weak spot of the whole system of the window right there. I want to make sure and curl this flashing tape up onto the jamb and protect that seam all the way down. Just about a 1/4 inch. It takes a little bit of patience. You want to have it come up too far. Once it got it, it really protects that seam. Some manufacturers will ask that you put sealant in that corner. That's fine too. I like to use the tape. Now that the tape is up on one side, we want to make sure that it's fully adhered. You use a J-roller here. This is a pressure-sensitive adhesive on these flashing tapes, which is what most of them are. So you really want to make sure you get a good bond by using a roller. All the way down, all the way around your whole window to make sure that's a really good bond. And if you notice here, this is where we have a bond. Right here we have 3 different bonds. We have the tape to the house wrap, the tape to the substrate, and the tape to the flange. That's one way of doing it over on this side. On the other side, I'm just going to put the tape right on top of the house wrap and the flange, and again fold that flange up a little bit to protect that seam right down there. Okay. Now that that side's done, I'm going to put it across the top. And I'm going to do the same thing on the top that I did on the sides. I want to protect the seam where the flange goes into the jamb. So when I put this on, I'm going to fold it down on top of the window jamb. It takes a little extra time, but it gives you that extra confidence that that inside corner is protected if water ever does find its way down in here. And again, now that that's done, I'm going to roll all the way around, make sure that that tape is sticking firmly. Now the last step is putting the drip cap over the top here. Before I do that, I'm going to put a bead of sealant along the top of the window here and go all the way across. The reason I'm doing that is to prevent any water, wind-blown water, from blowing up underneath my drip cap and causing problems in there. I'm going to squish this down on top. And fasten it a few times. Don't need too many. It's going to stay in place. The sealant's going to hold it in place down at the bottom. And at the top, I'm going to put one more piece of peel and stick flashing. And that will hold it in place and ensure any water that comes down that has found its way behind the house wrap from above, it's going to hit this flashing tape, go on top of the drip cap, and be directed to the outside. That's the whole idea with water management. You want to direct any water that gets behind your systems, you want to direct it to the outside as quickly as possible. Now that that's done, the last thing we do is fold down this flap. Like I said earlier, this is the most important part. We're not tucking this behind our flashing system, we're putting it over so that any water that gets behind the siding follows the house wrap down. Again, it's being directed to the outside as quickly as possible. And now we're just going to put the tape right across here. But we're not going to tape across the whole bottom here. We want to leave a couple of gaps for any water that does find its way behind the house wrap and hits our flashing to come out. If we tape the whole bottom, the water would build up behind there. So I'm doing what's called skip taping and leaving little gaps at the bottom. And the final thing are the two 45s, two ends, and then this side, and we're done. Now the unit's installed according to manufacturer's instructions, which is very important for maintaining the warranty. It's level, plumb, square, fastened, and we have our flashing system completely all around here that's going to keep water out for years to come.